This story is titled, "My Parents Bought My Brother a Tesla, then asked me to take the blame when he crashed it." Hey, Reddit. So my parents bought my golden child brother a Tesla, then tried to make me take the blame when he crashed it. Buckle up, because this is about to be the wildest family betrayal story you've read all week. So, I, 24 male, have been getting the absolute end of the stick in my family since I was a kid. My younger brother, Derek, 21 male, is the golden child who can literally do no wrong in my parents' eyes. The favoritism in our house is so obvious, it would make a sitcom writer blush. I'm not even exaggerating. This is some straight-up everybody loves Raymond type stuff. Let me break this down for you guys. Since I turned 18, I've been forced to pay $400 monthly rent to live at home. Yeah, you read that right, $400 to live in the same house I grew up in a bedroom that hasn't been updated since I was 12. Meanwhile, my brother lives completely rent-free, eating food I help pay for, using utilities I help cover, and generally acting like he owns the damn place. When I finally got the balls to call out this obvious BS, my parents hit me with that classic our house, our rules garbage that parents use when they know they don't have a real explanation. The double standards don't stop there. When I was in high school, I had to maintain a 3.8 GPA while working weekends at a local hardware store. I wasn't allowed to go to parties because I needed to focus on my future. Derek? This dude barely passed his classes, never held a job through high school, and was allowed to party every weekend because he's just being social and needs to enjoy his youth. Every achievement of mine got a half-hearted good job, while Derek got praised for the bare minimum effort. I worked 40-plus hours weekly at this soul-crushing corporate job just to save enough to escape this hellhole. My plan has been to save up enough for a decent apartment and first and last month's rent, but every time I get close to having enough saved up, some mysterious family emergency appears, and guess who's expected to help out? I graduated college 3 years ago. I busted my ass working part-time while taking a full course load, graduated with honors, and had a job lined up within 2 weeks of graduation. My reward for this achievement? A half-assed congrats text and a $50 Applebee's gift card. No party, no celebration dinner, nothing, just, here's some mediocre chain restaurant food, now keep paying rent. Last month, Derek finally graduated with a solid 2.4 GPA after 6 years of what I can only assume was professional beer pong training. This dude changed his major 3 times, failed multiple classes that he had to retake, and basically treated college like an extended vacation that occasionally required writing papers. And what did my parents do to celebrate his mediocre achievement? They bought him a Tesla Model 3 Performance, not the base model, the $60,000 plus version with all the bells and whistles, premium sound system, the works. I still remember the day they gave it to him. We were all standing in the driveway, and my dad hands Derek this small box. Inside are the keys to this gleaming white Tesla parked across the street. Derek starts freaking out, jumping around like he just won the lottery, while my mom takes about 500 pictures for Facebook. Then my dad looks at me, noticing my face, and says, "I kid you not, don't be jealous. Your brother deserves this after working so hard." Working hard at what? Beer pong championships? When I pointed out that I graduated in 4 years with honors while working and got squat, my mom had the audacity to say, "Well, college was easier for you." Derek really struggled. Yeah, he struggled to get out of bed before noon and remember which girl he was dating that week. I could go on for hours about the blatant favoritism, but you get the picture. For my entire life, I've been treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. From the second Derek got that Tesla, it became his entire personality. I'm not even kidding. The dude couldn't go 5 minutes without mentioning his whip or posting Instagram stories of the dashboard. The car wasn't just transportation for him, it was his whole identity. Now, Tesla Bro was born, and it was just as obnoxious as it sounds. Every night, he'd come home at 2 a.m. from whatever bar he was at, and rev the engine in the driveway like an absolute tool. Yes, I know Teslas don't actually have engines to rev, but this dip would floor the acceleration back and forth in our driveway, making that electric whirring noise at full volume. He'd wake up the whole neighborhood because, apparently, sleep is only for peasants who don't own electric cars that Daddy bought them. The kid drove like he was auditioning for Fast and Furious 27, electric boogaloo speeding down residential streets where kids play, doing donuts in grocery store parking lots, and filming those TikToks where people pretend to sleep while their Tesla is on autopilot. Every time I pointed out that maybe, just maybe, treating public roads like his personal racetrack wasn't the best idea, he'd just smirk and tell me to stop being such a buzzkill, bro. I even watched him drive drunk repeatedly. This wasn't just being a douche. This was actively dangerous to everyone around him. I offered to be his DD multiple times or call him an Uber, but nope, the car practically drives itself, bro. Yeah, except the autopilot doesn't magically make alcohol not affect your judgment or reaction time. His friends were no better. They'd pile into the Tesla, usually 4 or 5 of them, all equally wasted, and they'd go joyriding their word, not mine. I warned all of them multiple times that something bad was going to happen. I warned my parents too. They all told me to mind my own business. My mom actually said, and I'm quoting directly here, "You're just jealous. You don't have friends who want to have fun with you." Yeah, Mom. I'm super jealous I don't have friends who want to die in a fiery crash or kill innocent people. You caught me. With each passing day, Derek got more reckless. The videos got more dangerous. The speeds got higher. It wasn't a question of if something would happen, but when. And everyone except me seemed completely blind to what was coming. But then, the inevitable happened. On a Thursday night, I was in my room grinding out some work when I heard my parents' door slam open around 3:00 a.m. There was frantic whispering in the hallway, followed by my dad's car starting up and speeding away. I found my mom downstairs looking like she'd seen a ghost. When I asked what was going on, she mumbled something about your brother had a little accident with the Tesla and that my dad went to pick him up. A little accident? That's family code for major shit we're already planning how to minimize. Around 4:30 a.m., I heard my dad's car pull into the driveway. I went to the front window and saw him practically dragging Derek up the walkway. He could barely walk, was missing a shoe, and had what looked like dried blood on his forehead. My dad was frantically shushing him as Derek slurred something about the tree came out of nowhere, man. Turns out, Golden Boy wrapped his Tesla around a tree after leaving a bar. Shocking, right? Who could have possibly predicted this completely unpredictable event that I had only been warning everyone about for weeks? By some miracle, he wasn't seriously hurt, just a cut on his forehead and probably some bruises from the airbag. The Tesla, however, was almost wrecked. Front end smashed in, airbags deployed, windshield cracked, the whole 9 yards. They helped him to his room like he was a toddler who stayed up past bedtime instead of a grown-ass man who just committed a felony. I didn't get the full story until the next morning. Derek had been at the Rusty Nail. He got absolutely wasted with his equally brilliant friends, then decided that driving was definitely a great idea. His friends, these stand-up citizens, apparently encouraged this plan, with one of them even filming Derek doing shots and then twirling his Tesla key, saying, "Let's see what this baby can really do." On the way home, he took a corner way too fast, lost control, jumped the curb, and plowed straight into some poor homeowner's massive oak tree. My dad got there before the police would show, according to my mom's whispered phone call to my aunt, which I eavesdropped on. My dad took care of it with the homeowners. No idea what he promised them, but knowing my dad, it wasn't cheap. He probably wrote them a check on the spot to forget the whole thing. The real mystery was how he convinced them not to follow through with the police. They had the Tesla towed to our garage, where it sat like a giant metal middle finger. The front end was completely caved in, the hood crumpled like an accordion, Both airbags had deployed, leaving that weird powder residue everywhere. Inside the windshield was a spider web of cracks, and one of the front wheels was bent at an angle that definitely wasn't factory standard. It was a $60,000 paperweight now. The garage door stayed closed. 2 days after the crash, my parents called a family meeting in the living room. In the history of family meetings, not once has one ever been called to deliver good news. Nobody ever calls a family meeting to announce, "Hey, we're all going to Disney World." So I walked into the living room. My parents were sitting on the couch with those serious faces people put on when they're about to ask for a kidney. Derek was slouched in the armchair, scrolling through his phone like this whole thing was a minor inconvenience taking him away from his important TikTok browsing. The bruise on his face had turned a lovely shade of yellow-purple that, honestly, improved his appearance. My dad cleared his throat and looked at me with that fake serious expression he puts on when he's about to say something completely unreasonable, but wants to make it sound logical and fair. He's got this whole routine, straightens his back, does a little throat clear, clasps his hands together. It's like watching a shitty actor prepare for a scene. "Son," he started, "we've looked into the damage to Derek's car." He said this like the Tesla had caught a cold. "The insurance won't cover it because..." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Because he was driving drunk," I finished for him. My mom shot me a look that could curdle milk. "Don't be dramatic. He'd only had a few drinks, right? A few drinks that made him unable to walk straight or form coherent sentences when he got home." In my mom's world, anything short of being literally unconscious counts as a few drinks. My dad continued as if I hadn't spoken. "The point is, repairs are going to cost around $18,000, and we think it's only fair that we all chip in as a family." I actually laughed out loud, thinking it was a joke. Then I realized they were serious. They had the audacity, the absolute brass balls, to ask me to help pay for repairs on a car that I don't own, don't drive, and that was damaged because he decided to drive drunk and crash it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to help pay for repairs on a car that I don't own, don't drive, and that was damaged because he decided to drive drunk?" I repeated, just to make sure I wasn't having a stroke and hallucinating this conversation. "We're a family," my mom said, as if that explained everything, "and you're the only one with significant savings right now." Ah, there it was. They knew I had been saving to move out, and they saw it as a convenient pot of money to fix their golden child's mistake. My savings wasn't for my future. It was just an emergency fund for Derek's fuck-ups. "Got it! How much are you expecting me to chip in?" I asked, making air quotes around chip in because we all knew that was code for pay for most of it. My dad had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Well, your mother and I can put in about $3,000 from our emergency fund. Derek has about $500 saved up." LOL, of course Derek only had $500 to his name despite never paying rent or bills. That money was probably earmarked for weed and whatever overpriced streetwear brand he was into that month. "So, you want me to pay the other $14,500? I finished for him. It wasn't a question. My dad nodded like he was relieved I understood. "We'll figure out a payment plan, maybe $1,000 a month until it's paid off. We know you've been saving up." Derek finally looked up from his phone at this point, and all he said was, "It's not like you need a fancy apartment anyway. You're always working." The audacity of this kid could power a small city. He crashes his Tesla that I warned him not to drive drunk, and now he's giving me financial advice on how I should spend my hard-earned money, the money I earned while working 2 jobs and paying rent to my own parents. That's when I lost it. I laughed again, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh you do when something is so absurd. You can't even be properly angry about it anymore. "I'm not giving you a single cent for this," I said, looking each of them in the eye. Derek crashed the car because he was driving drunk, and he should be grateful he's not sharing a cell with some guy named Bubba right now. This is his problem, not mine. My parents looked at me like I just suggested we sacrifice the family dog. After everything we've done for you, my mother began, her voice trembling in that manipulative way she's perfected over the years. The Guilt Trip Express was leaving the station. What have you done for me exactly? I asked. Made me pay rent while he lives free? Given him a Tesla while I drive a car that's older than his driver's license? Constantly dismissed my accomplishments while celebrating his mediocrity? Please, elaborate on all you've done for me that justifies me paying for his drunk driving accident. My dad's face turned that special shade of red that only appears when someone challenges his authority. You will contribute to fixing your brother's car. End of discussion. I stood up, surprising even myself with how calm I felt. No, I won't. End of my discussion. The looks on their faces were priceless. They were so used to me giving in, to me being the responsible one who sacrifices for the family, that they couldn't process this new version of me who wasn't rolling over. You're being selfish, my mom said, pulling out the ultimate weapon in her arsenal. No, I'm being realistic, I replied. Derek chose to drive drunk. He chose to crash the car. He can deal with the consequences for once in his life. I walked out of the living room and went back to my room, ignoring their calls to come back and discuss this like adults. The irony of them suddenly wanting an adult discussion was not lost on me. As I closed my bedroom door, I heard Derek ask, "So, does this mean I'm not getting the car fixed?" Always focused on his goals, that kid. I had no idea what they'd do next, but I knew one thing for certain: this was far from over. In my family, no isn't considered a complete answer. It's just an invitation to find more creative ways to get what they want. The next few days were tense, as my parents barely spoke to me except to ask if I'd reconsidered their generous offer to let me pay for Derek's mess. I kept my answers short and to the point. No. This led to a lot of heavy sighs, slammed doors, and my mom doing that passive-aggressive thing where she talks about me in the third person while I'm literally in the same room. Some people just don't understand family loyalty, she'd say to no one in particular while I was eating breakfast 3 feet away from her. Real subtle, Mom. I caught them whispering a few times, huddled around the kitchen table with papers spread out. They'd go quiet when I walked in, never a good sign in my family. Anytime people stop talking when you enter a room, you can bet your ass they're talking about you, and not in a "we're planning his surprise party" kind of way. Friday night, I came home from work to find my dad on the phone with someone from the insurance company. He was in his professional voice, the one he uses when he's trying to convince people he's not full of shit. I caught phrases like comprehensive coverage and vandalism claim before he saw me and took the call into his office. Vandalism claim? That was new. Last I checked, drunk driving into a tree wasn't considered vandalism unless the tree pressed charges. I figured they were grasping at straws, trying to find some loophole to get the insurance to pay. Good luck with that. Insurance companies employ entire departments of people whose only job is to find reasons not to pay claims. But whatever, not my circus, not my monkeys. Saturday morning started with a bang, literally. I was jolted awake at around 7:00 a.m. by what sounded like someone beating the shit out of a metal trash can. I stumbled out of bed and looked out my window, which overlooks our driveway, but couldn't see anything unusual. The noise had stopped. I figured it was just the garbage collectors being extra aggressive and went back to bed. About an hour later, all hell broke loose. I woke up to shouting coming from the garage. I threw on some sweats and went downstairs to find Derek standing in the open garage, my parents behind him, all three staring at the Tesla. The car was even more wrecked than before, and I don't mean a little more damaged. I mean, it looked like the Hulk had a personal vendetta against it. The windshield was completely shattered, all the windows were broken, and there were massive dents in the doors and hood. The side mirrors were dangling by wires, and one of the headlights was just gone. It was almost impressive how thoroughly destroyed it was. What the hell happened? I asked, genuinely confused. The car had been fucked up from the crash, sure, but this was next-level destruction. Derek spun around, his face red with what looked like practiced rage. "Like you don't know. You did this." I actually laughed. "I was asleep all night. I didn't touch your car." My dad held up a baseball bat from my high school days that I kept in my closet as a memento from when I played. "Then why was this in the bushes outside?" my dad asked, his voice doing that fake calm thing that means he's actually super pissed. I said I had no idea, but my mom cut me off. "Don't lie to us. It was my bat that I'd owned for years, but I hadn't touched it in months. It lived in the back of my closet along with other high school sports stuff I never used anymore." "We've already called the insurance company," my dad said smugly. "They're sending an investigator on Monday." We told them someone vandalized the car out of jealousy. That's when it clicked. Derek must have taken my bat and further damaged his already wrecked Tesla, then planted the bat to frame me. The insurance wouldn't pay for the drunk driving accident, but vandalism? That might be covered. And bonus points for getting revenge on Big Bro who wouldn't pay for his mistake. Now it made sense. I looked at Derek and saw that little smile he was trying hard to hide. This wasn't just him being a spoiled brat. This was actual malice. He deliberately set me up and my parents were in on it. "You're seriously going to frame me for this?" I asked, looking straight at Derek. He smirked. "Who do you think they'll believe? The straight A student with a bright future, or the jealous older brother who still lives at home and complains about everything?" My parents stood behind him, arms crossed a united front against me. They'd already chosen their side, as they always did. It didn't matter that what they were doing was literally insurance fraud, a felony. It didn't matter that they were willing to let me take the blame for something I didn't do. All that mattered was protecting their golden child. "This is insane. And you know it," I said, surprisingly calm considering the circumstances. "I didn't touch the car. I was asleep all night." My mom scoffed. "We heard you leave your room around 2 a.m. The neighbor's security camera probably caught you too." Now, that was interesting. We didn't have neighbors with security cameras, at least none that would capture our driveway or garage. They were bluffing, which meant they knew exactly what had happened because they had helped plan it. Or at the very least, they knew Derek did it and were covering for him. "So, let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. "You want me to either pay $14,500 for repairs to a car I don't own, or you'll frame me for vandalizing it to commit insurance fraud? Those are my options?" My dad's face flushed. "Nobody's framing anyone. We know you did this because you're angry about the money." I went back to my room without another word. There was no point arguing with them. They'd already decided their version of reality. I closed my door, sat on my bed, and tried to think. This had escalated from typical family bullshit to actual criminal behavior real quick. I grabbed my phone and called my boss, asking for an emergency day off on Monday. No way was I leaving my defense in my family's hands when the insurance investigator showed up. I needed to be there to tell my side of the story. As I hung up, I realized something that made my stomach drop. My parents had just shown me exactly how far they were willing to go to protect Derek. They would frame their own son. They would lie to authorities. Which made me wonder, what the hell had they covered up for him in the past that I didn't even know about? The insurance investigator showed up Monday morning at exactly 9 a.m. The guy's name was Mac. He looked like he'd seen this before, wore a wrinkled button-down tucked into khakis, and carried a tablet and a camera. My dad tried to tell me to go to work and that they would handle everything, but I just stared at him until he backed down. Funny how quickly his authority crumbled when I didn't immediately roll over. My parents did their best June and Ward Cleaver impression when Mac arrived. Derek slouched nearby, looking appropriately victimized, occasionally touching the bruise on his face for dramatic effect. Mac was polite, but all business. He went straight to the garage to examine the Tesla, taking dozens of photos from every angle. He spent a long time looking at the front-end damage versus the new damage, which made me hope he might notice the obvious. This car had been in two very different incidents. After examining the car, Mac asked to speak with each of us separately. My parents went first together. They were in there for about 30 minutes. Then Derek went in for his interview, which lasted maybe 15 minutes. I could hear him raising his voice at one point, probably for dramatic effect. When it was my turn, I sat down across from Mac at our kitchen table, where he had set up his laptop and some papers. He looked at me and said he had some questions about my whereabouts on Friday night and early Saturday morning. I told him the truth. I was home, in bed, asleep. I had come home from work around 6:00 p.m., made a sandwich, played some Xbox, and went to bed around 11:00. I didn't leave my room until I heard the commotion in the garage the next morning. Mac nodded, making notes. Then he asked me point blank if I had anything to do with the damage to the Tesla. No, I said, looking him straight in the eye. And here's what you need to know that they probably didn't tell you. That car was already significantly damaged before this so-called vandalism happened. He raised his eyebrows, the most emotion he'd shown so far. I explained everything. The Tesla was a gift to Derek for his mediocre graduation. He'd been driving it recklessly since he got it. I told Mac about the drunk driving, the speeding, the TikTok videos. Then I got to the crash, how Derek had wrapped it around a tree while driving drunk about a week ago, and my parents had somehow managed to avoid police involvement. Check the airbags, I told him. They've already been deployed from the initial crash. Look at the front end damage versus the new damage. It's clearly different. The front end damage is from impact with a tree. The rest is from, well, not from me. I also told him about my parents' attempt to get me to pay $14,500 for repairs and how the vandalism mysteriously happened right after I refused. Mac wrote everything down without showing much reaction. Then he asked if there was anyone who could verify I was in my room all night. No, I admitted. I live with my parents and Derek, but I did order a pizza around 9:30 p.m. on Friday, and I was playing Xbox Live with friends until about 11:00. They can confirm I was online. He nodded and made more notes. Then he surprised me by asking, "Do any of your neighbors have security cameras?" "Not that would cover our garage or driveway," I said. "The Johnsons across the street have a doorbell camera, but it only sees their porch." He wrote something down, then he thanked me and said he'd be in touch with the family soon. As we walked back to the living room, I could feel my parents and Derek staring daggers at me. They knew I hadn't stuck to their script. After Mac left, all hell broke loose. My parents lost their collective minds. How dare I tell the truth to the investigator? The horror! My mom cried about me trying to ruin Derek's life over one mistake, as if drunk driving and insurance fraud were on the same level as forgetting to take out the trash. My dad got in my face, pointing his finger and telling me I'd better call the investigator back and fix this if I knew what was good for me. Derek just smirked from the couch, confident his plan would work because it always had before. The golden child always wins, right? I went to my room and locked the door, ignoring their demands to come back downstairs. For the next 2 days, I went to work, came home, went straight to my room, and locked the door. I ordered delivery food and only came out when I knew they were asleep. It was like living in a hostile foreign country where I didn't speak the language, and everyone hated me. On Wednesday afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Mac from State Farm Insurance. Could you meet me on Main Street at 4:00 p.m. today? I have some follow-up questions." I texted back that I'd be there. I didn't tell my family where I was going. I just left work and went straight to Starbucks. Mac was already there, sitting at a corner table with his laptop and a stack of papers. He motioned for me to sit down. "I wanted to talk to you away from your family," he said, his voice low. "We've uncovered some inconsistencies in the claim. Turns out Mac was more thorough than my family anticipated. He'd canvassed the neighborhood looking for security footage and found something. The neighbors 2 doors down had installed a new security system last month that had a wide-angle camera covering most of the street. And guess what it captured? At 2:13 a.m. on Saturday morning, Derek clear as day taking my baseball bat from my car's trunk, where I kept sports equipment, and going to town on his already damaged Tesla. The footage showed him methodically breaking every window, denting the hood and doors, and even ripping off one of the side mirrors. Max slid his tablet across the table to show me the footage. There was my brother at 2 a.m. staging the entire thing. It was so obvious and pathetic. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, Max said, and this is one of the dumbest frame jobs I've ever seen. He then told me he'd already reported the findings to his superiors at the insurance company. They were denying the claim and had referred the case to their fraud department. He had also been in contact with the local police, who wanted to speak with me and Derek. "The police officer will be here in about 10 minutes, Max said. "I wanted to give you a heads up before they contact your family. Given the circumstances, I thought you might prefer to talk to them separately." I thanked him, genuinely grateful for his thoroughness and for believing me. The police officer arrived. She was a woman. She took my statement, showed me the footage again, and asked if I wanted to press charges against Derek for attempting to frame me. "The DA will decide whether to pursue the insurance fraud charges," she explained, "but for the false reporting and the attempt to frame you, that's your call." I sat there thinking, yes, Derek is my brother, my flesh and blood, but he was also the person who had deliberately tried to frame me for a crime I didn't commit, who would have happily let me take the fall for his drunk driving and subsequent tantrum, potentially ruining my record, my job prospects, my life. I thought about all the years of favoritism, all the double standards, all the times I'd been made to feel less than because I wasn't Derek. I thought about how they were willing to let me take the fall for insurance fraud to protect him. And then I thought about how tired I was of all of it. "Yes," I told the officer. "I want to press charges. No hesitation, just a simple yes." She nodded, made some notes, and asked me to come to the station later to give a formal statement. We agreed on 6:00 p.m. That evening, I drove home, pulled into our driveway around 5:00 p.m. to grab some stuff before heading to the police station. To my surprise, a police cruiser was already parked out front. Looks like Officer Rivera hadn't wasted any time. Walking into my house, that moment was like walking into a war zone. My mom was pacing and crying in the living room. Dad was on the phone with someone, talking frantically about misunderstandings and family matters. Derek was sitting on the couch, looking pale. Usually, he had this permanent, smug expression like the cat who ate the canary and then successfully blamed it on the dog. When my mom saw me, she rushed over. "What have you done?" "The police were just here. They're saying Derek could be charged with fraud." "I didn't do anything," I said. "Derek did this to himself when he decided to frame me for vandalizing his car." My dad hung up his phone and stormed over. "This is ridiculous. We can handle this as a family. You need to call them back right now and tell them you don't want to press any charges." "No," I said simply. "I'm done covering for him. I'm done being the fall guy. None of you can make me drop the charges now." The aftermath was exactly the shit show you'd expect. My mom vacillated between crying and trying to guilt me into dropping the charges. My dad switched between threatening me and offering bribes suddenly. He could help with my rent on a new apartment if I just made this go away. Derek tried apologizing, but it came off as sorry I got caught rather than sorry I'm a scheming asshole. At 5:45, I went upstairs. I knew I wouldn't want to come back to this house after giving my statement, so I packed a duffel bag with clothes, my laptop, and some important documents. When I came back downstairs with my bag, my parents looked alarmed. "Where do you think you're going?" my dad demanded. "I'm going to the police station to give my statement, and then I'm staying with a friend for a while." My mom started wailing louder. "You can't leave! We need to handle this as a family." "We stopped being a functional family a long time ago," I replied. "Maybe we never were." My dad stepped in front of the door, blocking my exit. "If you walk out that door and go through with this, don't bother coming back. You'll no longer be welcome in this house." If you do this to your brother, you're choosing to destroy this family. I looked him straight in the eye. No, Dad, I'm not destroying the family. I'm refusing to let the family destroy me anymore. And if you're really willing to disown me because I didn't let that happen, I'm fine with it. I stepped around him and walked out the door. He called after me something about ungrateful children and family loyalty, but I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove to the police station. Giving my formal statement took about an hour. The officer explained what would happen next. Derek would be charged with filing a false police report, attempted insurance fraud, and potentially additional charges related to the original DUI crash that had never been properly reported. This might get messy, she warned me. Family cases often do. Are you sure you want to proceed? I nodded. I'm sure. When I left the police station, I had a text from my buddy Chris, got your room ready, ordered food. Don't be late, bro. I'd called him earlier to see if I could crash at his place for a few days. And being the solid friend he is, he didn't even ask questions. As I drove to Chris's apartment, my phone blew up with texts and calls from my family. I turned off my phone and kept driving. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt like I was finally stepping up for myself. Chris was waiting on his porch when I pulled up, 2 sodas in hand. He didn't ask for details right away, just helped me with my bag and told me, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. And in that moment, I realized something important. This was what actual family was supposed to feel like. Not obligation, not manipulation, not constant competition, just unconditional support. The kind I'd never found at home. Edit 1, holy shit, this blew up overnight. Thanks for the awards and support, Reddit. That means a lot, guys. Edit 2, for everyone asking for an update, stay tuned. It's coming soon. Lol, that kind of rhymed. Update, hey, Reddit. It's been a while since my last post, and a lot of you have been DMing me asking for an update on the whole Tesla bro situation, so here goes. It's been 6 months since I walked out of my parents' house with a duffel bag and a newfound backbone. Best decision I ever made. I crashed with Chris for a few weeks, then found my own place, nothing fancy. Just a 1-bedroom apartment where nobody asks me to fix their problems. Derek's case moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, blood alcohol level from the hospital the night of the crash, which my parents tried to hide, and the insurance investigation report. He ended up pleading guilty to all charges and got 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, a massive fine, and lost his license for 5 years. My parents weren't charged but got hit with hefty fines for their role in the insurance fraud. Between legal fees, fines, and still owing payments on a totaled Tesla, they're basically broke. As for me, I got a promotion at work. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're not constantly dealing with family drama, and I'm taking night classes for an MBA. Life is actually pretty good now. For the update you've all been waiting for, last month, the texts and calls started rolling in again, first from my mom, then my dad, and finally even Derek, using his jail-approved phone time. They all had the same message, just delivered differently. They need money. Mom went with the classic guilt approach. We're about to lose the house. After all we've done for you, how can you abandon us now? Dad tried his usual intimidation. You owe this family. Man up and help us out. Derek actually apologized first, saying jail had changed him and he sees things differently now, before asking for commissary money. You know what was really funny? Last week, when my parents showed up at my apartment, unannounced, no idea how they got my address, probably through some mutual family friend. There they were, standing outside my door, looking significantly pathetic. Both of them had that desperate look. They had a whole pitch prepared. They were selling the house but needed money to transition. The bank accounts were frozen. Dad lost his job after the scandal. Mom's anxiety was acting up. Wouldn't I please help my family in their time of need? I listened to the whole thing without interrupting, watching them spin their sob story with their dramatic performance. When they finally finished, I just stared at them for a solid 10 seconds before asking, Sorry, I must have missed something in your little presentation. Could you remind me which part of trying to frame me entitles you to my financial support? Mom's face crumpled like she'd been slapped. Dad stood there, speechless for once in their lives. They had no script ready. The roles were reversed, and they clearly had no idea how to play the part of people who weren't in control. But they weren't in their house anymore, where they made all the rules. They were at my door, and I held all the cards. I told them I'd think about it and close the door. I did think about it for about 5 seconds before sending a text. The answer is no. Don't contact me again, Dad replied with threats. Mom with emotional manipulation, Derek with promises to change. I blocked all their numbers. Some people might think that's harsh. Maybe it is. But after 24 years of being the scapegoat, I'm finally putting myself first. They're adults who made their choices, just like I'm making mine now. So that's it for now, Redditors. Thanks for sticking around through this whole clusterfuck. You guys are the best. I'll update you if anything else happens. So, peace out for now, folks.